What is up, everybody? Welcome to another edition of Crunch Time here on RotoGrinders. We've got the final NBA regular season slate of the season here for you this afternoon with Fanduel rolling out what is a fairly interesting late afternoon slate. I think that Fanduel got the NBA slates right today. Not competing with the main MLB lock with this late slate, and you've basically got all the teams that still have something to play for here on the late afternoon NBA slate. So we'll break it down here for you over the next half an hour as we lead up until lineup lock with all 7 games starting at 3:30. So should be good to roll here. I am Justin Van Zuden. I've got TJ Zwarich alongside. TJ, long time no talk. How you doing?
Doing very well, enjoying the Easter Sunday. Just went for brunch with my parents, got a different supper later this evening. So nice to get 2 shows in, breaking down these slates in between. I feel like if you took our advice and played some Phillies and some Rays, you're feeling pretty good about the baseball slate. I'm feeling pretty nice about the Drew Rasmussen lock button I went with right now. And then in terms of NBA, if you were playing over on DK, I think if the only 2 early games you got heavy exposure to were the Knicks, who we talked about, and then that 76ers and Nets game, I know we talked about making sure you get 100% Cam Thomas. Well, it's midway through the 4th quarter right now. He has 46 real life points. So if you were listening to us in the early crunch time, things are probably going pretty well for you. So hopefully we can keep it going in round 2 here.
We'll look to keep that rolling. And the teams that have something to play for here, all the playoff teams are locked in, but the seeds can still change. And I'm going to highlight the teams that have something to play for. That would be the Lakers, the Thunder, the Warriors, the Pelicans, and the Timberwolves. All can be seeded anywhere between 5th and 9th in varying combinations in the Western Conference. So those 5 teams do have something to play for. Currently, the Clippers. The Clippers also 5. See, one of these teams that I've highlighted doesn't have anything to play for. That's OKC. My bad. The Lakers, the Clippers, the Warriors, the Pelicans, and the Timberwolves are the 5 teams that have something to play for. Right now, the Clippers and the Warriors own those 5 and 6 spots. And then the Lakers, the Pelicans, and the Timberwolves would be in the play-in games. Everyone else that's not highlighted has nothing to play for. So San Antonio, we know they're tanking. Dallas decided the other night that they wanted to start tanking. Utah is tanking. Sacramento's locked into their seed. Denver's locked into their seed. Memphis, OKC, they're locked in. Phoenix is locked in. And Portland is tanking. So all of those teams rolling out a lot of reserves today. And the highlighted teams are going to be playing to win. And that's where you're going to want to be spending your top dollar salary on these plays today. So basically, it's value from the other teams and spend ups on the teams that have something to play for. That's how I'm approaching it. Would presume you're in a similar boat there.
Yeah, that's kind of how I am going about things as well. Like Memphis and OKC for value, and then the teams that have something going on that are needing a win that I'm looking to spend up for.
All right. Let's see. So as far as news goes, for these teams that have something to play for, it's basically business as usual. Zion and Paul George are the main guys that are out, but they've been out for extended periods. So we know that those guys are out. If we highlight the other teams that have nothing to play for, you can see that basically all the top end players are projected for a whole lot of not much. You got a whole lot of guys resting. The only real guys we have projected in here are Sabonis and De'Aaron Fox, who almost certainly aren't going to play big minutes. Shaedon Sharpe, who is probably the one viable option from a team that's tanking. Kelly Olynyk, I don't know about his minutes, but basically you're not getting a lot of top-end options from these teams that are either tanking or have locked up their playoff positioning. But what you do get with those teams is value. If we sort by RG value on FanDuel, we haven't seen this kind of green all year long, but we've got it today because of all the late news and all the resting players. Most of it comes with Memphis, where you're getting a good chunk of that value. And it's just going to be kind of a wild lineup for the Grizzlies today and the Thunder on the other side of that game. And you've got a 230 total. So that's where people are going to be looking to get their value. You mix in the higher end plays from teams that have something to play for. So anything else in from a general slate overview standpoint for you before we just kind of dig into the positions here?
Nope, I think that's about everything. Yeah, the other team that is playing for nothing that I'm still going to have some targets from is Utah. I talked about this a bit on the earlier show. A guy like Chris Dunn is still somebody I like quite a bit today.
Yeah, and you can get some nice mid-range plays from those teams too. I don't mind that. We'll break down some of those guys here as we move along. So we can probably go through each of the 5 positions individually. Obviously, there's some overlap, but we only have the FanDuel lock to worry about here. Point guards, and there's a lot of guys that are point guard only. You just mentioned it, Chris Dunn. Trey Mann is projecting very well. Saban Lee with the Suns resting all their guards today. You do have Steph Curry as a high-end play. Now, none of these high-end guys are going to project super well on a points per dollar basis, but you do have to spend salary somewhere. So is point guard a spot where you're looking to maybe spend up for a Curry, or are you looking for all kind of mid-range or value here?
So the tough thing about this for me is Trey Mann as well as Chris Dunn both only have point guard eligibility. And so I think if I was playing 150 lineups today, I'd be keeping a very tight pool at point guard. I'd get a little bit of Saban Lee and McKinley Wright on these tanking teams for value, just in case they have a big ceiling game. But Trey Mann would be my main source of value. Chris Dunn would, without a doubt, be my highest owned play here. I'd mix in a little bit of Trey Jones, D'Angelo Russell, and Jordan Poole, but I'd want to definitely get over the field on Steph Curry. So I'd get sprinkles in of some of these other guys, but I would say, like, if you get 200% ownership to allocate to these two positions, 150 of that at bare minimum will be between Dunn, Mann, and Steph Curry.
Yeah, clearly the top 3, I think, at the position here. I don't mind McKinley Wright also. Don't think he's as much of a lock or as safe by any
Wright
means.
is not starting for what it's worth. I know we've
Yeah.
seen some things with Dallas where, like, we thought Jaden Hardy was a great play the other day, then he ended up barely playing. Hardy is the starting point guard for Dallas. They just released that starting lineup, and Wright is not in the starting lineup, and we were projecting him to be there.
Yeah, nothing is a guarantee with that team, so I don't love that. I
And,
think
like,
I'd play Saban Lee over him at the moment.
if you're playing 150 lineups, make sure Jaden Hardy is still in your pool because he had limited minutes last game. He barely played. But if they decide, now that they're locked into the lottery, if they decide to just, like, okay, this guy is our rookie, we want to let him run, like, that is absolutely something that could happen. No one's going to be playing him because he barely got any minutes last game. But they were trying to lose. He's a great young rookie, and they were trying to make sure they lost that game so they could get locked into the lottery. Now they are locked into the lottery. They're there. There's nothing else they can do. And so Jaden Hardy is the starting point guard. I could see him actually getting a full allotment of minutes today, and if he does, he could be the highest scorer on this entire slate.
Yeah, who knows what they're going to do. They did manage to successfully lose that game the other night despite having like a 15-point lead in the first half. Goes to show you that if you want to get that done, you can. So we'll see what becomes of the NBA investigation into that matter. They've said they're going to launch, but Dallas's players, somebody's going to have a good game here. They are facing the Spurs. Just a matter of figuring out who that's going to be. All right, as we pivot over to shooting guard, we've got Grizzlies here. We've got Thunder here. Not as many overall options because a lot of the players are point guard only, but you've got Conchar.
You sounded like you were singing the Hokey Pokey there. We got this here, and we got
and
this
that there,
here.
and then we shake it all about, and we've got John Conchar as the chalk of the slate, which seems a little bit strange, but I believe you mentioned right before we went on air that he's like running the point this afternoon.
John Conchar is currently the starting point guard for the Memphis Grizzlies, and so definitely somebody we want to be keeping our eye on today and probably getting in a lot of our lineups. Like, the two probably quote unquote cash plays here at the shooting guard / small forward position. Now it depends who else you want to play in your lineups on whether or not you want to use Conchar and Kennard here or there, because those are probably the two that you're wanting to roll with. But the only other three people I'd be looking at the shooting guard position would be Anthony Edwards, Shaden Sharp, and Klay Thompson. Like, those are really the three guys that I'd want to be getting overweight to in tournaments and wanting to make sure I get in a lot of my lineups. So that's kind of it for me. I just want to double check and make sure the Grizzlies lineups. Kennard is not starting, so actually take Kennard off that list for me, because maybe he just doesn't actually get. That could be kind of one of those Cole Anthony situations from the other night where he projects really well, but then as soon as he's not starting, he just ends up not playing. And so Luke Kennard, actually, I would want to take off that list for me now that he's not in that starting lineup. And I'd be looking at the range of Conchar, Anthony Edwards, Shaden Sharp, and Klay Thompson.
Yeah, I just
and of course, Man, who you can play at this shooting guard position.
Not on Fanduel.
Oh, right. Of course, that was Terrence Mann. Never mind. My apologies.
Yeah, Trey Mann, you're stuck at point guard on Fanduel, but I had a tag on Kennard. I actually took that off with that news as well, so that worries me some. But Conchar, definitely the play here. I think if you wanted to go cheap and pivot off of Kennard, you could go to Lindy Waters. You could go to Okogie. I think he's okay as well. If this is a spot where you decide you want raw points, Edwards with Minnesota having something to play for today. And I really like your Klay Thompson call. I wrote him up as one of my favorite contrarian plays today. With Golden State, needing a win to secure their spot, their seed spot, and playing Portland, I like Klay Thompson's tournament upside as well.
Don't give me the credit for the Klay Thompson call, because the reason I liked him was because I read up what someone wrote in the expert survey and I couldn't remember who it was. And so you were the reason why I liked Klay Thompson today. And so that was actually just me rebounding back to your call. I do also, in terms of tournaments, like if you land on Lindy Waters here, I think that's totally fine. But I'd maybe want to pick like one of Man or Waters to go with. So maybe you go with Waters in a lineup where you're playing Steph Curry at the point guard position and you're spending up there. And then Terrence Ross is also somebody that I like for tournaments today.
All right, let's move on to small forward. And a lot of these guys are dual position eligible, but you do have some guys. What do you still have that Memphis lineup in front of you? What was the whole?
It is so wonky. So we've gotten a bunch of starting lineups, and so I'll kind of go through the ones that are weird here. So the Grizzlies will start Conchar, Roddy, Zaire Williams, Vince Williams, and Kenneth Lofton Jr. And so Vince Williams is the person that we were not projecting to be in the starting lineup. We were projecting to get 30 minutes. He's a shooting guard. If you land on him at 3,500, I think that's actually no problem at all now that he's in the starting lineup. Just something to keep in mind that like you may not need that salary. Same with somebody like a Zaire Williams. You just may not need that salary. Thunder will start Man, Jared Butler, Dieng, Sarr, and Robinson Earl. The Jazz will start Dunn, Agbaji, Samanic, Olynyk, and Azubuike. Clippers normal. Nuggets will start Brown, Braun, Watson, Kankar, and DeAndre Jordan. The Suns will start Saban Lee, Landry Shamet, Josh Okogie, Ish Wainwright, and Jock Landale. Normal for the Warriors. And then the Mavs will start Jaden Hardy, Frank Ntilikina, Theo Pinson, Davis Bertans, and Markieff Morris.
Late season NBA and its full finest here this afternoon. So
let's hit the like button, and I once again want to emphasize, like, Jaden Hardy, I really think could be a tournament winner today. He barely played any minutes last game, and there's a high chance that could happen again. There's a chance Jaden Hardy might play 16 minutes in this game. He might play 20 minutes in this game. But he's starting, and they're now locked into the lottery position. He might get 32. He might get 36. And if he does, he could have 60 fantasy points at next to no ownership.
Yeah, those are the types of plays that can make a difference on this slate for sure. All right, let's move to small forward. Again, we've talked about a few of these guys, but we just mentioned Zaire Williams starting for Memphis. You got Brandon Ingram with the Pelicans needing something to play for or having something to play for. He's been great over the last 3 weeks. Raw points matter. Give me Brandon Ingram as one of my small forwards today and a spot to use some salary. Otherwise, you've got, Roddy is starting, Okogie is starting. You've got the Nuggets guys now, if you want to trust some of those guys in the mix. Who are you looking at small forward?
A lot of these guys, so as words are hard. As some potential spend ups, LeBron James and Kawhi Leonard, I think, are very interesting here, but I'd probably rather play them at power forward. Just because there are guys like Brandon Ingram and Anthony Edwards here at the small forward position that I want to play so much. Like Ingram is my top spend up on the slate. Obviously, Conchar is somebody we want to get into our lineups. If I'm choosing between Roddy and Zaire Williams, it's definitely Roddy. But having said that, like Zaire Williams is probably going to come in at less than half the ownership that Roddy has. So keep that in mind if the rest of your lineup is chalky. Roddy is definitely the more likely one to have a better game, but he's going to be probably 2 to 3 times his own.
Yeah, don't mind those guys. I think I'm going for one spend up here, and that's probably Ingram. Like the idea of using, if you're playing Leonard or LeBron at power forward, and then you can get your favorite kind of cheap guy here. All right, let's go ahead and move to the power forward spots. You mentioned those guys earlier. You got LeBron here, you got Leonard here, you've got Anthony Davis here if you want it. You've got the cheap Memphis guys again, Lofton, who's starting and grades out as one of the better point per dollar plays in our projection systems. You've got Robinson Earl, who's starting down here. So what are you doing at power forward?
I didn't see this looking back on that 3-game slate that we had the other night, but I wonder if anybody actually took my advice and played Jordan McLaughlin as a spend down position for that little 3-game NBA slate we had Saturday, because he ended up playing 20 minutes, had 5. He was like just over min price, and he had 5 points, 2 rebounds, 9 assists, a steal, and a block, and so he probably ended up being one of the better values on the slate. I'm interested. I'm hoping somebody followed that one and took down some money. But at the power forward position, Anthony Davis is definitely my favorite spend up here. Kenneth Lofton is my favorite value here. If I mentioned before that if I'm choosing between Roddy and Zaire Williams, I'm choosing Roddy. Well, if I'm choosing between Kenneth Lofton and David Roddy, I'm definitely choosing Kenneth Lofton. I like him a lot more than these OKC players, because I think OKC could still spread this out to a few more people. If you land on somebody like a Mamu or like a Mamu Kelishvili or a Lucas Samanic, I think that's fine. You land on Kyle Anderson, I think that's fine. But my favorites here, without a doubt, are Anthony Davis and Kenneth Lofton.
Yeah, I like those two. I think that's probably the cash game combo, and probably the guys I'd want to be on in tournaments as well. You got other guys that you could play at center if you wanted to. Maybe throw Watford into that mix if you trust his minutes.
I do think potentially Watford in tournaments, and I do think this kind of mid to upper tier at power forward, and then also center position, because so many of these guys have dual eligibilities, are super interesting for tournaments. Like not Sabonis, but Kawhi, LeBron, Kelly Olynyk, Draymond Green, Kyle Anderson. Like Draymond or Kyle Anderson could have a 40-50 point game today, and nobody's going to be on them.
Yeah, the whole 7K, 8K, that range, because it's so easy to build stars and scrubs. You're not going to see a lot of ownership on those guys outside of maybe Chris Dunn, who's in there. But other mid-range players aren't going to get to heavy ownership today for sure. All right, we've got about we've got about 10 minutes left here until lock, and outside of one person spamming Ja Morant stuff in the chat that TJ's just taken care of, we don't have a whole lot of questions, so feel free to throw those into the NBA Crunch Time Discord on RotoGrinders or in the YouTube chat if you've got questions here on the FanDuel lock. With about 10 minutes left until lineup lock, feel free to get those questions in. All right, let's go ahead and maneuver our way to center. Go ahead.
Question here in the YouTube chat. What do you think, like, how do you feel about Bruce Brown's minutes today?
Unless we can just talk about Denver for a second, because I think that's interesting. We haven't touched on a lot of those guys, but even though they're resting all their starters, I mean, we still have them spreading things out a little bit. So yeah, we can talk Denver here for a second.
So my thing with Denver is just anybody that's going to be in the rotation for playoffs, I don't think I really want to play. And so Bruce Brown is still like Denver's 6th or 7th guy on their roster, and he's going to be playing 20, 24 minutes a game in playoffs. And so I don't think they're going to push him that much. I would expect him to, like, if he doesn't just play the first half, then maybe do something like he starts the first quarter and he starts the third quarter, and that's kind of it. Bruce Brown's somebody that I'm not really looking to target today because I can't see him getting over 30 minutes.
Yeah, I think, if you're looking to go here right now, we've got Peyton Watson as the highest projected player in terms of minutes at 32. We've got Jordan at 28. I think those guys are fine if you end up landing in there. Everybody else, I'm pretty much off of for Denver today. So and with Jordan, I mean, he's only center eligible. You only get one center on FanDuel. So as we pivot back there, like, Jordan is basically the same price as Jock Landale, so I think I'd rather just take Landale. You can go cheap with Robinson Earl. You could potentially play Davis here. Both Gobert and Towns are going to be active for Minnesota. They'll be going for a win, so maybe you play one of those guys. They scored like 150 points yesterday. So what are you doing at center?
Yeah, I think you nailed it. If you're going like that cheap mid-range area, Landale's definitely the best one. I have no problem with Gobert, but if I'm choosing between him or Karl Anthony Towns and I have the salary, Towns is definitely the one that I want to get up to. I like Anthony Davis is still going to be my favorite, and then I do like the guys with 2 position eligibility, like a Draymond Green. I think he's very interesting today. Jonas Valanciunas, I think he is incredibly interesting today, like JV in tournaments, going up against Rudy Gobert. What do you need from Jonas Valanciunas? You need minutes. As long as that team has a starting center that he can match up with defensively and isn't going to take him out to the 3-point line, then he's going to get those minutes and he's probably going to smash. So Jonas Valanciunas is probably like my favorite low-owned tournament center today. I'm not playing this slate for what it's worth. I'm not going to lie and say that I am. It's Easter Sunday. As soon as we're done here, I'm going to be heading to a family event type thing. But if I were, I think my favorite thing to do in a FanDuel tournament, and it's risky, don't get me wrong, it's risky, but would be to use somebody as Jonas Valanciunas as my center and then get Jaden Hardy in at the guard position, because I think those are 2 plays that you could get sub 5% owned on this slate, that each of them could potentially be the highest score.
Yeah, no doubt. Love those calls. And I think, that's, if you're mixing and matching, you got some interesting options and interesting ways to go here, especially if you're doing 50 plus lineups today. All right, we do have a couple of questions in the Discord. We got about 5 minutes until lock. Throw your questions out there if you've got them. Sugar Ray says it's a utility on DK, Dunn or Towns.
Wow, it feels terrible.
It does feel terrible.
It's done.
Yeah, given the circumstances, Towns is a little banged up. It's also a back-to-back. If that game gets out of hand, I think they'll try to manage his minutes, but give me Dunn as well, though I do like both. All right, Jay Sam says, since someone like McKinley Wright is not starting, isn't he more appealing now for tournaments? TJ kind of touched on this philosophy. Pretty sure you agree with some of those, random Dallas players potentially being slate breakers today.
Yeah, I do not mind McKinley Wright for tournaments whatsoever, but I do think that it's super interesting that now that they're locked into that lottery position, Jaden Hardy is starting. We're projecting him for 20 minutes. We were projecting him before that. I'll do a quick refresh here, but before that starting lineup got announced, when we were projecting right there, we only had Hardy in for 20 minutes. Now that they're solidified in the lottery, we got Hardy up to projected for 29 minutes and 30 fantasy point, but still 1% ownership. Well, he's projected to get 30 fantasy points in 29 minutes. If he plays 29 minutes, Jaden Hardy could actually still be one of the highest raw point scorers on the slate. And so, yes, McKinley Wright is interesting for tournaments because I don't think he'll remain at 25% owned. I think that'll drop. But I'm a way more interested in Jaden Hardy just because there's so many other places we can go to for salary savings. I don't need to save salary with McKinley Wright. I can go to 100 other places. But Hardy is one of those guys that, like, if he happens to get the minutes, he could put up 50, 60 fantasy points.
Flying Armbar is saying he's getting a lot of Jared Butler on lineup HQ. He is starting today. What's your interest level in Butler?
Jared Butler, I am good with. I like me some Jared Butler. I just had to make sure I was looking at the right Jay Butler because John Butler for Portland, not playing that dude. He could play 30 minutes and end up with 4 fantasy points. But Jared Butler for OKC, who is starting here, I think you can take shots on. This is a guy that doesn't really ever play, but he is a strong point per minute producer. And so I'll double check here just to make sure, like, he is in fact in the starting lineup, right? Yes. And so if that's the case, I'm definitely down to give that a shot.
All right, we got about 2 minutes or so left until lock. YouTube questions, we are good. NBA DFS, any interest in Braun at shooting guard? We've kind of touched on Denver generally. Braun, not one of their key pieces, though. Would you be willing to go to him?
No, not somebody I'd be rolling with.
All right. Let's see. Don't see any other questions in the Discord. We do have Jay Sam's typing. So you got questions? Get them in here before we hit the lock in about 2 minutes. And then we'll be all done with NBA for the regular season. Feels a little bit weird because then when you roll back to playoff NBA, you know, the logic just reverses. So it's really interesting. Any interest in Zubac on FanDuel with everybody on Landale?
Yeah, that's a very similar kind of pivot to me, like same mindset as Jonas Valanciunas. Strong point per minute producer that as long as he gets the minutes, he will have a good game. He might get the minutes tonight. Nobody's going to be playing him. If you get 30 plus minutes out of Zubac, he could be the best point per dollar center on the slate. You just don't know that he's going to get there. So I love that type of tournament play today.
Don't mind him myself. Love the GPP angle there with Zubac at center at low ownership today. Which Williams do you like better for cash games, Vince or Zaire?
I think I would go I would probably go Zaire just based on we have never seen Vince Williams play. Like he's played like a minute or like 4 total minutes in the NBA, I think, at least this year. So I would go with Zaire just based on that. We have at least seen him play before, but I honestly don't know, to be perfectly candid.
Yeah, I don't know much about him either. So would agree with that call. And
projections have 4 points higher for Zaire, so that's what I'm basing it on.
Yeah, and that is logical to me as well. All right, with that, we are at the lock of the final primary slate of the regular season. It's been a wild ride over the last 6 months with the NBA. I know the hockey playoffs are around the corner as well. We've got baseball in full swing. We've got the Masters wrapping up this afternoon. Busy time on the sports calendar, and the NBA playoffs are finally here. So would like to thank TJ for joining me as always. TJ, any last words before we get out of here?
And that's it. Whatever you're celebrating.
Spider-Man does whatever a spider can. Spins a web any size, catches thief.
The audacity of this guy.
Yeah, I just had to get you.
Rob.
Had to get one more in on you.
Feels like I'm getting Rick rolled here. No, that's it. Happy holidays, everyone. And, I think I might have like a day or two off here coming up. I can't remember, but I'm almost always on. So we'll be seeing you soon.
All right, everybody, enjoy the rest of your holiday weekend. Thanks to Rob for producing as well. For TJ, I am Justin, and we'll catch you all later. Have a good one, everybody.